Hey guys, welcome back for part 3 of my Star Wars Infinities episode. We already went over A New Hope, which had one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. Empire Strikes Back, which has a cool cover, but I didn't really like that much. But now we get on to one of the best, which is Star Wars Infinities, The Return of the Jedi. Now, you know what? I'm not going to say anything. Let me just get to it. Okay, so it pretty much starts off the same. It's the scene with Leia, disguised as a bounty hunter, taken in Chewbacca into Jabba's palace, and actually, it's a very minor change this time, actually. Jabba just hits 3PO harder than before, and what ends up happening is the Jabba's like, I can't understand what this person's saying anymore, so I'm just going to kill them. So Leia basically reveals herself, and then shows the thermal detonator, unlike in the movie, and she actually gets shot by one of the guards. No, it's actually Boba Fett shoots her, but Lando knocks a guard into Boba Fett, and that throws off his aim enough that she gets hit in the shoulder, and she drops the detonator. And so they're all like, oh my god, we gotta run away, this thermal detonator's gonna blow. And of course, 3PO is crushed by Jabba, so he's stuck. Boba Fett tries to steal Han. Leia shoots at him and actually shoots the control panel on Han's carbonite encasement, so that... whatever. They realize the detonator's gonna blow, they all have to run away, and they're like, oh my god, we gotta leave 3PO. We gotta leave 3PO behind. So the palace explodes, and Leia's like, oh my god, see 3PO, and I'm like, yay, 3PO's dead! So they're like, okay, so now they still have to find Han, so they steal the sail barge and meet up with Luke in the desert, who no longer had to come to Jabba's palace. So then we cut to the Death Star 2, where the Emperor's like, stay close to me, Vader. I have felt a disturbance. And then, because they're still looking for Han, Luke does not go back to Dagobah, and Yoda is dying, and Obi-Wan's talking to him, and there's really not much there. Luke is by himself looking for Han, trying to find out where they are with R2, and then Leia, Lando, and Chewie are all looking in a different place, and they're all in the cantinas. And while Luke is talking to Leia, he has a vision of Yoda dying, and so he goes to Dagobah, and somehow Palpatine senses that Yoda just died, and he sends Vader to Dagobah. And so, let's see, Lando, Leia, and Chewie go to this random city somewhere, on some nameless world, and they find a guy who knows where Boba Fett is with Han, and he basically says that he's meeting with Imperials, and he tells them where, and then we cut to Luke on Dagobah with R2, and he's like, oh my god, it was too late, and suddenly Yoda appears, and is one of the dumbest pictures I've ever seen. Yoda really looks like a decaying corpse. I don't know what they were trying to draw here, but it's not Yoda. It looks horrible. So basically he's saying, you have to confront Vader, and then Obi-Wan appears and also looks like a decayed corpse, and he says the same thing. Blah, blah, blah. Lots of talking, and they basically are like, yeah, we still have to talk, and whatever. So we cut to the meeting with Boba Fett and the Imperials, and basically he's like, oh, I'm going to offer you Han Solo for money, because you could bait a trap. But Leia is there with some ridiculous sniper rifle that Han apparently had for no real reason. So she basically is waiting for him to show that Han's there, and then they cut back to Dagobah for like 10 seconds, a page really, where Luke is like, okay R2, I'm going to record a message that you send if I can't get back to Leia. And then he gets captured by a Star Destroyer, Vader's Star Destroyer, and he sends another message in about 5 seconds, and you find out the message is about a minute long, so I don't know how he did that. Vader's like, oh, make sure you don't harm him, and capture him, and whatever. So then, we cut back to Boba Fett and the Imperial, and the Imperial's like, okay, take Han here. And Fett's like, Han's in the hold of my ship, and then Leia shoots, tells them to drop their weapons. The Falcon shows up, Fett shoots at the window, tries to plant some bombs on it, Leia blows up the Imperial shuttle. Fett tries to plant a charge on the Falcon and actually falls off and tries to throw the detonator away, but he's too close, and he ends up dying, which is really sad for me, actually, because I think Boba Fett's awesome, except in the movies, but in the books, You really like him a lot more. So Leia steals Slave 1, actually, and she takes it back to the Rebel fleet while Lando and Chewie take the Falcon. Luke's captured by Vader, and he's like, oh, you have until the Death Star to decide if you'll accept my offer. Suddenly, we cut to the Death Star, and then Luke is there, and they basically have the same conversation again as the regular movie. So, eventually, Han is freed from carbonite, and you find out that he's probably going to be permanently blind because the control panel was shot by Leia, and he was in way too long. So, Leia's all sad, and Lando, and they're all offering help, and then there's actually a ground force on Endor. That's not them, because they couldn't. Han was frozen. So there's a bunch of nameless rebels. Half of them go into the bunker, and then the Imperials come out, and the other half start attacking. So there's actually a decent battle going on this time, unlike the terrible one from the movie with the Ewoks having to save the day. So we cut back to the fleet where Han is blind, and they're talking about, they just received a message from Luke, and Luke basically says, Leia, we're brother and sister, and Vader's the father, and that's really it. And then he sends you get the other message where he says he's captured and don't rescue me, and Leia, of course, immediately says, we have to mount a rescue. Let's go to the Death Star. And they all think that's crazy, and Leia's like, oh, I know it was crazy. I didn't mean anything. So we cut back to the Death Star where the Emperor is just sitting there with Vader and Luke, as like the movie, and he's basically like, your friends are all gonna die, you'll see. So someone comes up to Lando and tells him that someone just stole Slave 1, obviously. I don't know who. I have no idea. So they're basically like, okay, we're going to jump the fleet after them, I guess. And Han is yelling at people that he won't be left behind, and he just isn't left behind anyway. Lando's like, okay, and he's like, Han is just stunned. It's actually kind of funny to hear him stunned, speechless. Or, whatever. So Leia takes Slave 1 to the Death Star and is captured in about 2 seconds. And they come out of the fleet comes out of hyperspace into a giant trap, as in the movie. And the Emperor, and a messenger tells the Emperor Leia's been captured. And he's like, oh my god. And Leia walks in with 2 guards. Luke freaks out. Palpatine's like, yay. And then it cuts to the fleet fighting over Endor. And the guys on the ground are actually in a pretty bad spot because there's a lot of Imperials. There's almost none of them left. And actually no, nothing really happens. You just see them shooting in an Ewok village, but that doesn't really mean anything yet. And then we cut back to the Death Star again. Vader says the Emperor has Vader kill the princess, but Luke grabs his saber and stops him. And then one of the rebels on the planet grabs all the explosives, runs up to the bunker where the shield generator is, and basically gets himself killed, blowing up the outside. And their shield, and then there's the Imperials inside who are like, oh, our shields are down, but the Death Star is ordering us to put everything on them. So then it cuts back outside, and everyone's getting attacked by Ewoks all of a sudden. So the Ewoks are by themselves just killing as many people as they can, rebels and Imperials. Cuts back to the fleet for 1 page, basically saying the Falcon's going in to take down the shield generator since their shields are gone. So the planet's vulnerable, but the Death Star isn't yet. So then we're back to the fighting between Luke and Vader. Luke gets knocked down. Leia tries to stop Vader from killing Luke, gets shocked by the Emperor. And then Luke is like, Dad, we're your kids. And Vader's like, oh my god. And the Millennium Falcon makes its run on the planet, blows up the generator. This time it's 2 X-Wings inside the Death Star, not the Millennium Falcon. Luke slices off Vader's arm in the control room. Vader grabs his saber again, fights back, and Leia protects Luke and basically says, don't kill us, and Vader collapses, says, my children. And then Palpatine disappears, and they realize the station's coming down, so Leia and Luke carry Vader out to a shuttle, and the Falcon has landed all of a sudden. So Lando's like, oh my god, that's Vader, and they're like, okay, just help us. And so they bring him on board, and Han's still blind, so he doesn't know who it is, and he hears Vader say Leia, and he's like, oh my god, tell me that's not who I think it is. So basically later Vader's like, I'm sorry, and then we cut back to the fleet after the Death Star blows up, where everyone's like, yeah, we're gonna help kill Palpatine. And then the second most amazing thing in this series, Vader walks in white armor and says, "I'll help locate my master." So basically Vader's a good guy. That's amazing. I don't know what's better, that or Yoda crashed the Death Star into a planet. I don't know, they're both amazing. So basically Luke says one last line. He's like, "Oh, with you on our side, Dad, we can do anything to stop the Emperor. Yeah, he won't have any chance." And that is Star Wars Infinities. So thanks for checking it out. I love this series. If you get a chance to see it, I would totally recommend it. It's so good. There's a lot of cool stuff in it, so definitely check it out. And yeah, I'm uploading stuff all the time, so stick around.